Hello and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence.
And I'm Meg Hofdahl.
And today we're talking about the movie Shirley. Meg, it's July. Happy July.
I know, and we're recording this on Canada Day, so happy Canada Day to all my fellow Canucks.
And we are together, if you couldn't tell, which, you know, we've both been social distancing and quarantining on our own and, you know, with our families. And so we felt like it was safe to get the kids together and play and, you know, hopefully we will stay well.
Yeah, I hope so. And can we break down the ice cream that we just ate?
So there's this ice cream. I mean, is Bridgman's just a Minnesota thing? Like, I don't know. Bridgman's is this ice cream feel-good mom and pop sort of restaurant. Like, they have meatloaf and mashed potatoes. I saw several plates go by as I went in to pick up our malts. But these malts, you won't even believe them. And if I describe it to you, you're not going to believe that it's true.
So I think the most outrageous ones are the ones that have the cotton candy on them. And 3 of our kids got the ones with the big cotton candy like thing attached to the milkshake. And then your kids got the unicorn ones that have like the waffle cone upside down. And then Dexter got like a red, white, and blue one with Pop Rocks and brownies. And it was strawberry ice cream. They're huge.
And there was a pinwheel in that, too.
Yeah, it's so cute. And then, of course, we shared the coffee one with the espresso malt balls, which, oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't know where those have been all my life. And it also had 3 donuts on top.
But you know what? We shared, so it was so good. Oh, my God.
So, yes, we have to look forward to these little things now. And Bridgman's, way to go. And they're in collector's cups, so you get to keep them. If you have a Bridgman's near you, you should go and try this. The one we went to is in Duluth, and it was lovely. So now we feel a little bit sick to our stomachs because we're not used to sweet things anymore. I don't know. I'm not.
No, I usually don't eat that much. I can't imagine having one all to myself, but our kids couldn't even handle. Even our 13-year-old boys couldn't handle the whole.
Well, my son did finish his, but
okay, mine didn't. Mine tapped out, but
I know. I'm like, Campbell, you ate it all? He's like, yep. So you know what? Whatever. And as Dexter was spilling on himself, Vienna said, you know what? Even if it spills all over you, it's worth it in the end.
That's right, girl.
So I think it was good advice. We're going to talk about this movie, Shirley, which I don't know if it was ever meant to come out in theaters, but obviously it was just released straight to, was it Hulu? Yeah, Hulu. In the month of, it was released in June, and it is about Shirley Jackson. I want to know how you felt, Meg, because I know she is a personal hero of yours. How do you feel about this fictionalization of her life?
You know, I have so many mixed feelings because it's so hard to go into something like this and not be the well actually person. And so I didn't know anything about it. I actually purposely didn't watch a trailer or anything beforehand because I just wanted to go in as blind as possible. But I just a couple months ago read her biography. I've read almost everything she's ever written. And so I wouldn't call myself a Shirley Jackson expert in this in the sense that, you know, I know everything about her because no one can know everything about anybody. But I feel like I probably know more than like the average person. So it's like when you read a book and you watch a movie, it's so hard not to start deconstructing it. And so I think I was struggling a little bit from my perspective. But I have a lot to say.
So I saw that this was based on a fictional novel by Susan Scarf Merrill, and I assume you had not read that then. And I knew, like you, I didn't want to know anything going in, but I knew just from what you have told me and from what I've read on my own, I'm like, when did she have kids? Did she have kids after this then? And I knew she had 4 kids and that she was writing and raising these children. And so when she had no children of her own in this story, I was like, well, you know, wait, what's going on? But I didn't look it up until after because I didn't want to know. We're getting into spoilers, obviously. And, you know, this is just a fictionalization of her life. What specifically, how do you feel about the choice that she was childless in this version? And why do you think, I mean, maybe we don't know why authors do what they do. Maybe we do. But why do you think they chose to focus on this as a story and not give her children and have this, this young couple staying with them, and she's the one who had the baby. I don't know. What do you think?
So this is what I think. Yeah, so that was kind of where my eye started to twitch, because as much as, and I really did love Elizabeth Moss as Shirley Jackson. I felt like she embodied a lot of the things I love about Shirley Jackson. But the thing that I love about Shirley, the person, is the duality, is that she was writing this wonderful Gothic horror fiction, and she wanted a literary career. But on the other end, she had 4 kids, and she felt this desire to be a good mom, but also pressure in the 1950s to be a certain way. And it's that balancing act that I fell in love with, because that's what makes her a complicated person. I mean, she wrote 4 books about motherhood too, so it was very much a part of her life. She was the kind of mom who was picking them up from preschool and making them lunch, and I mean, she was very into their lives while also being this incredible author. And I like that, but I understand perhaps that doesn't make a good movie. So here's what I think happened, and it wasn't until one of the last shots of the movie where I realized what they were doing, is that the woman who is staying with them is Shirley as well, and that they together made Shirley Jackson, if that makes any sense, in some metaphorical way, because there's that shot of when they're standing there on the edge of the cliff, and then you see only Shirley standing there, as though the other one sort of morphed into her, or they morphed together. And I realized, oh, they were showing the 2 sides of her by showing these 2 women. And that's what I think. I think that the younger one was representing the other aspect of Shirley Jackson. But this is an indie movie, so they chose to do it that way, and then instead of doing like just a straight biopic. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I read too that the author who wrote the novel wanted to create a Shirley Jackson type story about Shirley Jackson, but have it be fiction. And so this is a type of story she would write, but turn it, and make it about her. And so too, like you were saying, it's a younger version of her, and that wanting or needing to be cook the perfect pot roast, or be the perfect mother, or be the perfect wife, versus what do I want to do with my life? And this woman, this younger fictional woman in this movie, she wanted to go back to college, but she was slowly realizing she was never going to have that life. And there was no Shakespeare Society.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, so I think, so it was like kind of a roller coaster for me, because there was one point in the movie where I started to cry because it was so beautiful, because I love Shirley Jackson so much, and I love what she wanted to represent. But then there were other parts of the movie where I'm like, but no, this is so wrong. So it was definitely an up and down roller coaster for me, and it was kind of fun, because it wasn't like a straight biopic where it was like this happened and this happened. In fact, when I read her biography, I was like, well, they'll probably never make a movie, because on the outside, I don't think her life would have been that fascinating. What they did get right is her husband. I thought that he was depicted very well, in terms of how he seemed in her biography, which is he cheated on her a lot. He acted superior as far as writing, and was kind of an asshole, and I didn't like him. And when I read his biography, he became the villain, And so when the younger woman goes and confronts her husband about cheating on her, and she has that baby with her, I really then saw the Shirley Jackson in it, where I was like, yeah, that was her life. Obviously it was beautifully shot, and it was a beautiful movie. I do want to talk about the lesbian aspect.
So before we get into that, I'm speaking of, you were just talking about the biography. So before I forget, they portrayed her in this movie, and I'm wondering how much of it was true, about maybe being bipolar or being depressed or having that is agoraphobia. What was true about that?
So from what I understand, she did have some agoraphobia issues, especially as she got older. There would be times where she like wouldn't leave the house, and she did have like a probably bipolar sense. I mean, she would go through depressions. And so I thought that was very, apropos and very appropriate, because she did struggle with that. She struggled with her weight. She struggled with being unhappy in her marriage. She struggled with a lot of things. They never had like a ton of money. She finally did get, money as she got more successful, but, there were a lot of things that she had to deal with, and a lot of it boils down to the time period in which she lived, and it comes out so beautifully in her writing, and she talks about it with such gravity and such lush language in her books, and that's why I love her. But what I wanted to address about the lesbian aspects, where she and this woman become lovers, is it kind of bothered me only because I was worried that it was taking away from like the other important aspects, because I felt like it was maybe salacious and like the most interesting hook, and I'm like, oh no, like I don't care who she's having, like I literally don't care who she's having sex with. So if it had been a man too, I would have been like, why? I don't, it doesn't matter. But I understand that her work has lesbians in it and lesbianism, and there had been talk, does that make her lesbian? As she never said she was a lesbian. There's no proof. But I appreciate that they wanted to show that in whichever way they could, but at the same time I'm worried that it buried the lead, so to speak, and like took away from the other aspects. What do you think?
Yeah, I was curious if there was any truth to that. I know this character was fictional, who she was having this relationship with. But at the same time, like, I'm like, okay, maybe it's not about that. It's not about the sex. It's about this feeling of freedom. And guess what? You guys are screwing around, and we're going to take some of our power back. And if I feel this way, I'm going to feel that way. And so, I mean, whether she was bisexual or whatever, again, I don't care either. So it didn't bring me to a place I'm like, oh, she's meant to be with her and that's her true love or anything. I almost felt like they were doing it as like an FU.
Okay, I like that. When you say it like that, yeah, maybe I'm being too literal. Maybe I need to look at it more as like it's an FU and like we're going to do this behind your back, and it's like a way of like having any sort of freedom in like this stifling 1950s atmosphere. Yeah, okay, I like that better now that you explain it that way, because
that's the way I was looking at it, but I don't know if that's right, but that's how I viewed it.
No, I like that. I like that better, because I'm just like, oh, I was worried that it was like, oh, I ship her with this woman now, and it's like, no, let's talk about her literature. Yeah. I mean, who cares? But yeah, I see that, and again, like, her work has been in lesbian theory, literature theory for a long time now, which when that was addressed to her, she was like, oh, really? Like, I didn't know. And I don't know if she was being cheeky with that or what, but in the end, I really liked the characterization of her. She was bold. She was brass. She was a lot of things that I thought it encompassed. But I would love to see maybe a more traditional film where we could get to see her life in a little bit more of a non-fictional way. But in the end, all these movies are fiction. I mean, we can only guess what's going on in somebody's head. But I thought they did a good job of showing her darker side, certainly. Maybe they didn't show her lighter side enough, though.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I liked some of the things, like she had those witty, quick comebacks when she needed to or wanted to. I liked when she poured that entire glass or bottle of red wine on that woman's couch that her husband was sleeping with. Like, that was pretty awesome. I described it as, I was taking some notes, it's like hauntingly beautiful. Like, it almost felt like a ghost story in a way. It obviously the acting is wonderful, and I felt like it was really powerful in its restraint and quiet moments because they didn't tell us as much as they showed us, I feel like. And so even when speaking of the scene when the two women are together, she's on that swing and she just steps up and like puts her leg between her legs or whatever. And it was just, they could have done something, I don't know, much more showy, but it was, or telly, but it just wasn't. It was restrained, I think. I'm going to mention who directed this movie. It was directed by a woman, Josephine Decker, and Sarah Gubbins wrote the screenplay based on that book. It's 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, so people are liking it. If you notice, the young guy, his name was Fred in this movie. I can't think of the actor's name, but he's been in...
Logan Lerman? Yeah.
So he is... I saw this Twitter thread the other day specifically about him being cast in this movie, and they said this is persona casting because he's usually in YA movies as like a love interest and you trust him, and so we go in as the audience trusting this guy because he's fresh-faced and sweet and we know him from other things, and then it's supposed to be a gut punch when we realize there's no Shakespeare Society. And so then the thread said who are more famous versions or examples of persona casting, and the consensus was Ben Affleck in Gone Girl, and because he was so tabloidy and Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, because the audience goes in with this idea of that actor, and then it plays to that part so well that it based on persona. So they're saying this played against persona casting with Logan Lerman because we trust him, and then it was a gut punch. But we go in trusting Mr. Rogers. We go in trusting Tom Hanks. And Ben Affleck, we have a little bit of an icky feeling about him.
Yeah, I like that. That's really interesting to think about how their persona, like outside, would affect how the director can then use that
either towards or against type.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it's true because I recognized him and I was like, oh yeah, I think he's like been in things when he's younger. Mm-hmm. And I thought, he's a cutie, but then that's kind of that. Yeah, that it definitely was a gut punch because you kind of put yourself then in her shoes, because then you feel just as like what as her. Yeah.
Can you think of other persona casting? So this is a fun idea that I'd never heard of this concept before, but it makes sense. Either so with type that you just go in trusting and you know the character already because of who they cast, or against type and then it's like, wait a minute.
For the thing that popped in my head is like Notting Hill with Julia Roberts. Like it would be weird if it was somebody like we'd never seen before. Yeah. And we have to believe, it happens. We've seen that where it's like they pretend they're a famous actress or whatever. But that probably helped.
No, that's a perfect example. And that's so adorable. And Hugh Grant is so adorable. Sorry.
Oh, wow. But I'm sure it happens so much. Yeah.
More than we're even aware of. Yeah.
I also kind of like the opposite thing where, like, let's say the British office or the American office where, you go into that, like literally Steve Carell was the only person we knew. And so those people feel like real people in the office, because if they were all celebrities or something, it would feel strange. So I kind of like the opposite too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I have this quote from a review. It's a review that Elena Shepard wrote of this movie, Shirley. She said, Shirley and Rose, that was the young woman's name, I'd forgotten. Shirley and Rose become physical symbols of an oppressive domestic environment that leads to female decay. And that is what Shirley Jackson's novels were about. And so, yeah, the two of them, like you said, it's, trying to bring in her fiction into this fictional version of her life.
So meta. Yeah, no, really. And I think, yes, that's exactly what Shirley Jackson wrote about. And so I think, and it makes sense to me where it's like, okay, you don't want to have a movie with like 4 kids in the house, and that would have just felt strange. I get that. I do. But at the same time, it's poignant to think about when she died, she still had an 11-year-old son. She died of heart disease. And June 27th, the other day, was Shirley Jackson Day. So, FYI, we should be celebrating that every year. It's because of the lottery is why it's June 27th. But that is, I mean, in all of her work, her short stories, her novels, she is addressing this duality. And like I said, it's ironic because she ended up writing like 4 books about parenthood. And they're like these funny kind of like realistic looks at what it's like to be a mom. But we can't even fathom what it's like. Like, I am trying to balance being a mom and an author, but I can't even fathom what it would be like trying to do that in the 1950s. And not only
in both those realms, because women even then weren't as respected or regarded.
Right. I mean, and then her husband's like, you know, going and doing whatever he's doing, and he didn't help around the house. And, you know, she was kind of known as like at some points, like she didn't keep the cleanest house, but it's like, I'm sorry, she's literally like writing literature that's going to last a lifetime. So who gives a fuck? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's just, there's something about her work. It just speaks to me on like this fundamental level of being female, but also loving Gothic, loving horror, loving words. And so if you watch this movie and you got anything out of it, please read something by Shirley Jackson.
So speaking of that, loving horror and Gothic, I connected with the character of Rose right away because she read the lottery and she got horny afterwards. Like, and that's like a kind of an extreme reaction, I know, but she was like, "Oh my God, this horror story was so good, it made me feel something." And like, that's what good horror makes me feel. Not necessarily horny, but it makes me feel something.
It's okay. That's okay. Yeah, that's true. That's another kind of showing and not telling. It was like, this is how excited she got. Yeah, she reads the lottery, and also, which was true, is that this novel Hangs a Man was based about a woman who went missing in Shirley's community. And so I kind of liked how she was going around and doing some detective work, because that's always fun.
I really liked a couple of the lines about that too. Like, Shirley was trying to get into the head of this character who, you know, was based on this real woman who disappeared, and Rose said maybe the only way she would ever be noticed is if she disappeared. Like, that's the only thing that important that she's ever going to do or something. And I was just like, wow, that made me feel like it really hurt my heart to think that there's a lot of people who probably feel invisible, and the most important thing that ever happened to them was to be a victim or to disappear, and that's why I think it's so important, like when we're talking about real people and true crime and all of that, to remember those people versus the monsters.
Yeah, somebody just posted on Facebook today a book they got, and it says like the 5 forgotten victims of Jack the Ripper, and it's literally a book about those women, and it said they weren't all like sex workers, not that matters, but it was like they were real human beings, and it's a whole book about them, and I just thought that was cool. And it's like, I'm glad we're kind of like steering toward that direction, because Shirley kind of feels like this kinship with this girl, because Shirley never felt pretty. She had a mother who made sure she never felt pretty, and she just always felt kind of out of sorts, and she never really felt like she fit in, and she felt like not noticed. And I mean, that's one of the reasons she probably settled for Stanley and let him walk all over her, which is frustrating. But I think a lot of us can sort of relate to that idea that we feel like we're background players in our own life. And that was, again, talking about females in particular, but there's so many poignant things to take. I definitely want to watch this movie again, because I've gone through the like emotional roller coaster. So now I can go in it again in like a different headspace. Yeah,
no, that's true. And that's fair. And as I said, when I was watching this, and then I was able to come out and research afterwards, you obviously had read her biography before, but I'm like, how much is this is true, and how much is this bothering Meg?
Yeah, I mean, I want to just be like, I don't even Like, I don't know. It's fine. But, yeah, I was definitely, my eye twitched several times because I'm just like, no. But that's what's so hard. It's like, do you want to watch some dry thing about, like, exactly what her life was like? Or what would Shirley Jackson appreciate? I think she'd appreciate some sparkle and some fiction. So
I know the things that we love the most, it's the hardest to watch them or, you know, in other people's hands almost. It's like, wait a minute. Anyway, let's rank this movie on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 being we hated it, 10 you think it's a perfect movie. We need a perfect Shirley Jackson scale.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's got to be... Shirley Jackson was known to be a witch, and she did like to do witchy things. So let's do tarot cards
with the Hanged Man card specifically because she turned it up 3 times. It was so I don't know if it was planned or whatever, but it was good. So how many tarot cards of the Hanged Man do you give Shirley?
I'm gonna give it right now. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 because the performances were wonderful, but there was just an aspect of Shirley I was missing, and if I watch it again I might come out with a different number, but right now I'm going to say 7.5.
I'm going to give it an 8. I enjoyed it. When you mentioned what you just said, it brought to mind the scene where she is mean to everybody at the table and she's left alone and she just starts eating the mashed potatoes out of the bowl, and I'm like, okay, I like feel this on a soul to soul level. So I mean, not that maybe she never did that, but I got it. And showing, not telling, like, I'm just gonna eat the mashed potatoes out of this bowl.
Yeah, I know. I think it captured, she had a very like, she probably was a little bit of a bitch, and I think it captured that, so I like that.
So as Meg said, if you haven't seen this movie, or if you did and it inspired you to learn more about Shirley Jackson, I think the best thing you can do is go read something that she wrote. There are so many great short stories and longer works, and so don't limit yourself. Yeah, reread The Lottery in a new frame of mind, but go back and pick up We've Always Lived in the Castle or Hangsa Man or Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. Like read something Shirley Jackson, please.
Please, I'm begging you.
Okay, so until next time, we'll see you scrolling through the horror section or eating a bowl of mashed potatoes.
Yeah, or go to Bridgman's and get those ice cream malts and be as sick to the stomach as we are. Bye, guys.
Bye.